Hey everybody, my name is Wes.
My name is Matt.
And Matt, we're here to talk about building church websites.
Building a church website. We're Bob the Builder of the church website.
Oh man, that was very corny, but that's okay.
It was. I just made that up.
Well, welcome everybody. Now, if you're joining us live today, that means you can see we have a chat wide open here. We are not going to be answering questions in this chat as we go along because we're going to have a dedicated time of Q&A, so just to forewarn you. But I will be asking questions. Matt will be asking you all questions because, after all, we like to feel like we're talking to other people besides just ourselves here.
Yeah, it gets kind of lonely in this room.
Well, it does, staring at a camera, but we know there's so many people out there watching. Now, before we dive into all things of building church websites, a couple things I want to remind you all about. Number one, if you're like me and you like to watch videos to learn how to do things, we have a phenomenal YouTube channel. You're probably watching on YouTube right now, perhaps. Definitely check that out. We've got videos that show you how to use the software, step-by-steps, and so much more. So definitely check out the YouTube channel.
Also, we have a Facebook group. And by the way, I'm dropping links into the chat for these things. So click on the YouTube link so that it's ready for you when this workshop is over. And also click on the Facebook link I just dropped. We have a user group, a private group of our ChurchTrac users that we would love for you to join. It's got thousands of ministers all over the world that love ChurchTrac and love ministry so much that they would love to answer any questions you have about either of those things. So we would love to see you there.
All right, and then last but not least, in ChurchTrac, when you're using the software, that help button on the top right corner of your screen, anywhere in the software, you're going to see this help button. Definitely take advantage of that. That's where you can go to our online user guide. That's where you can ask us questions and so much more. So great resource.
Super helpful. That's why we called it the help button.
That's right. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. And if you are watching, by the way, on YouTube or watching on Facebook, you're not going to be able to interact with us. All the interaction's done through our Vimeo channel. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, just know that you're not able to actually interact with us live right now.
But we've shared the link to the Vimeo stream in both of those channels. So in the comments or in the chat, just click that link. It'll take you to Vimeo where you can join us in the live chat.
All right, Matt. Church websites.
Church websites. Let's dive in.
This is a big topic, and we've got a huge outline here going through it. I want to encourage everyone, have your paper ready, pen and paper to write some notes down. We're going to have a lot of good noteworthy things, but we do have a really great resource with our online user guide that we're going to share that article that actually covers a lot of the stuff we're talking about today in a user guide form, so we'll drop that in as well. But today, we're going to talk about 4 things. Number one, defining your website purpose and goals.
Yeah, that's step 1 for all of this.
It has to be. And then we're going to dive into church website branding and what that looks like, how to do it. Then we're going to go into the anatomy of a church website, but not just a church website.
But a great one.
A great church website. And then some church website pro tips that we have learned from some developers that have been doing this a long time, and also from our in-house developers that build church websites all day, every day. Some pro tips they've shared with us. And again, we're going to have a dedicated Q&A at the end where we're actually going to enable our Q&A mode, but we have the chat wide open there because we're going to be getting some feedback from you all along the way.
Yep, we'll be asking questions along the way. It's going to be pretty interactive. This isn't just like a PowerPoint presentation.
No.
We want you all to participate in this and give us some feedback, and we'll roll along with it.
Yeah, and I don't have a single slide prepared either because we're just showing things as we go. So first, let's talk about defining our purpose and goals, Matt, because sometimes, especially like I'm the kind of person, I just want to dive in and I want to start building all the things, clicking around and figuring it out.
You got to slow down though.
I do, because when it comes to a church website, you have to have a purpose and you have to have goals. So I want to talk about purpose first. Like enlighten everyone, like when we're talking about purpose, like what kind of purpose are we talking about?
By purpose, we mean you have to know what you want your church website to accomplish. I talk to a lot of leaders, and I get the impression that there's like this assumption that they just need to have a website.
Which is true.
Which is true, but there's not like a reason for why. You have to understand, in order for the website to be worth it and to actually benefit your church, you have to have a goal that website will accomplish, and then you have to design and add content to that website that will help accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
We're going to cover all of that today. There are lots of different goals and purposes that a church website can have, but in our experience, we see those things fall into like 3 categories, essentially. We see a lot of church websites that their primary goal is to reach newcomers. So outreach to newcomers is a big thing. If your primary goal is to attract new visitors, we recommend focusing on content or adding content that showcases your church's unique culture and mission and the warm welcome that people will experience if they were to walk into the doors of your church.
Yes.
So you basically turn the website into the front door of your church. Because for the most part, and I'm jumping the gun here, but your website is your first impression for the most part, for most people. Especially today, people will...
80% of people go to our church websites before ever stepping in the doors.
Yes.
Which is wild.
Yeah, so we recommend adding things like a welcome video, testimonials from current members, and also, this should go without saying, but clear service details like the location and the times, and if there's any like nuances about parking that they need to know that. You need to add that. So just to make it helpful and make it less stressful for someone who's never been to your church to come to your church for the first time.
Yeah, so that's like one purpose. Another purpose could be, well, I want it to be a resource for my members.
Yeah.
I want it to be a place where my members can go to look at the upcoming events, things that we have going on in our church. But I also want it to be a place where they can go give online, they can sign up to be a part of a Bible study, maybe they want to volunteer. And then you have a hybrid approach, which, spoiler alert, and we're already there, but this is the approach that all websites should take. And it's, you want your website to be something that is going to be outreach for the new people, but you want your website to also be a resource for your current members.
Yeah, you don't have to pick either or.
You don't. You actually want both, but here's the kind of unique thing, and we were talking about this earlier today, but it really comes down to your church of how much you're going to lean one way or the other, because in some churches, they want to focus a little bit more on the outreach aspect because maybe they have a very technologically savvy congregation for the most part that'll use their church app a lot, so they don't need to put as much for their current members.
Yeah.
So it really just comes down to the church.
It just comes down to the church. So we're not going to tell you in this workshop exactly what to do because there's no one-size-fits-all approach to church websites. But we're going to give you the building blocks and the resources to know how to run this at your church and what decisions to make. So we're going to give you a lot of really good resources. So for as far as goals
let's
are concerned,
talk goals. Yeah,
let's talk goals. We talked about the purpose. Let's talk about goals. For guests, what do you want your guests to do when they're on the website? That's a question that you have to ask and answer for yourself as you add content and design things. Do you want them to watch a previous live stream? I don't know why I'm holding. I was going to take a drink and I started talking, so I'm just holding this cup for no reason. Do you want them to watch a previous live stream or listen to a past sermon? Or would you like them to learn more about your church and what your church believes? Or do you want them to just know when services are and what to expect when they're there? Be able to reach out and ask questions, get plugged into a small group. These are questions you have to think through. And
I would say write them down, because that way when you're getting with your leadership, even if it's just you and your wife because you're a pastor and wife combo and you're a smaller church, or you're a larger church and you got a big staff, think, all right, what is the most important thing we want our guests to do when they go to our website? Then flip side, those are the goals for the guests. Let's talk about goals for members. What are the most important goals for our members? Because maybe that's getting plugged into a small group. Maybe that's giving online. Maybe that's seeing upcoming events. Maybe that's volunteering or submitting prayer requests.
Something like that, yeah.
And so it's almost like you could even draw a Venn diagram or make it like a pros and cons list, but really just determining to our church what is most important for our guests to do and what is most important for our members to do, because that's really going to drive how we build the church website.
And here's another this is an extra pro tip that I'm throwing in. Don't answer with all of the above. Like all the suggestions that we just listed off, we have literally an outline in front of us that we're reading.
Yeah.
All the things that we just read off as suggestions, don't answer with all of the above, because you don't want to use your website to get them to do 5 or 6 or 7 different things. That's never going to work.
Yeah.
Find the 1 to 3 things you want the guests to do that are the most important things you want a guest to do, and then the 1 to 3 most important things you want the members to do, and funnel those people into those options. And don't try to throw everything else in as well.
Yeah. Now let's talk about branding, Matt, because I know everyone's like, I want to start building the site and stuff. First, we have to have our purpose and we have to have our goals to accomplish that. Then we need to talk about branding, because if we don't have branding,
your design choices.
Yes, it will. And so we've got a lot of really amazing resources that we've pulled together to help with branding. So let's first start talking about color palettes.
Color palettes. So when it comes to color palettes, and what I just did, I actually just dropped a link into the chat to an article that we've written. Wes is showing it on the screen now, How to Build a Church Website. Virtually everything that we're talking about today is included in this article.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back and review some of the things we talk about today, this is here waiting for you. It's a pretty concise version of what we're talking about today. For color palette, here's a question I'm going to ask all of you in the chat. So go ahead and jump in and answer. Do you have a color palette for your church's brand? Or another way to put this is like, do you know what your church's branding colors are? If I were to just ask you. You don't have to have like the exact name of the color, because I'm not that knowledgeable on colors either. But you know, is your branding, is it purple and yellow? Is it red and blue? What is it? Just tell me. Go ahead and let me know in the chat if you know what your color palette is for your church. The brand colors you use on your church website should be the same colors you use for all of your other digital and print media. There needs to be a cohesion and a consistency from not just your online presence, but also your physical, tangible presence as well.
Yeah.
We have this, there's this resource that we've linked to in that article. Wes is showing it here. This is called Coolers. This is probably my most favorite tool online ever.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's just fun because it's simple. All you have to do is go to coolers.co, not coolers.com, unless you need to keep the drinks cold at the next potluck. But go to coolers.co, and it just uses machine learning to give you a really good color palette with colors that actually go together really well.
Yeah.
And all Wes is doing is just hitting the space bar.
That's all. I'm hitting the space bar, and so let's say, you know what, I'm like, okay, I like this color. This is one that we think we're going to use, and now I hit the space bar again. It's keeping that color and adding additional ones. This is a really neat way to quickly figure out like a color palette for your church.
Yeah.
But I always say, like, sometimes it's good to talk to someone who knows like art and actually has the brain behind this to know what colors actually go with each other, because this still is not going to always give you the perfect winning combination.
I mean, just because you like that pink doesn't mean that pink is good for church branding.
Yes, that's very true.
But yeah, that brown on the left, that yellow that you just chose, that green, those are good colors, and you could lock all three of those and then keep cycling through more until you get a good palette.
Yeah.
We recommend at least 3 colors for your church's branding. That way you have some contrast to work with. And at least one really light color to use as like background for things for, again, you're looking for contrast. So you've got like a dark on the left, an orange in the middle, and then that light blue in the middle. Those 3 would actually be really good and work well together.
And this is such an important thing whenever we have our colors for our site, because you want consistency across all your church branding. Make sure you use the hex codes and copy those down and everything. That way your colors are the same everywhere on your site, on your social media posts, on any printed material, on posters, whatever it may be. It just always looks good, because that's something pretty common. A lot of churches say, well, our colors are, purple and gold, and then they use very different shades of purple and gold all over the place, and it just doesn't look consistent. So that's one place to start, colors for a website.
The next is fonts. Once you have your brand palette down, next is to turn to fonts. Now, when it comes to like the website, not all fonts are supported. There's like web fonts that.
Correct.
Yeah, you do have to be cognizant of what's called web fonts, and that not every website builder or browser is able to handle all fonts. But as long as you're maintaining consistency, at least in print media, and also on everything that you produce and design, graphic design wise, you can choose whatever fonts you want here. We found this tool called FontJoy. Again, we've linked to this in that article that I shared in the chat for how to build or how to design a church website.
Yep.
This works just like Coolers, where it's pairing things together for you. If you already know a font that you like or that your church is already using, Wes is typing in Poppins. Is it your church that uses Poppins?
My church doesn't, but this is a pretty popular font I'm seeing a lot of churches use.
Yeah.
Lots of variants of it, so there you go.
So you can hit the space bar to cycle through different fonts, or you can search for a font if you already know one that you want to use. And then Wes is locking that one down so that he can hit the space bar, and it'll cycle through fonts that pair well with that, what was it, Poppins.
Yeah, and this one, it's not spacebar, I actually just hit a generate button, but there you go. Yeah, and then it just starts adding in all these different types of fonts. This is kind of interesting because I can tell it how much I want it to contrast the font. So if I want them to be very similar, I can move it there. Or if I can say, I actually want them to be very different.
And then start getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, so you can really go wild with it. But this is such a neat tool, I think, Matt, to help church leaders just kind of figure out where they want to go with fonts if they haven't already figured that out.
Yeah. Now, again, just like with colors, what fonts you choose will depend on your church. And fonts, to me, like that really determines or conveys your church's character, almost even more so than a color palette in many ways.
Yeah.
So like if you want a very new, modern look, this is just an example, you're going to want a bold-faced font that's sans serif. That's what Poppins is. It's really thick writing, and it doesn't have the tails and the wings that, like a serif would.
Tails and the wings.
That's what I call them, tails and wings. They're serifs, that's the word for it, but that's what that is. It's just all, like Times New Roman is the one that everyone thinks of. That is a serif font. But just because you don't want a serif font doesn't mean it's wrong for all churches. A traditional church, if you're a little more traditional in your character and your form at your church, you'll want a more formal serif font. So use this to not just pick a font for like serif or sans serif, modern or traditional, but also fonts that will pair really well with that. That's what Font Joy's really good at.
And I would say don't get too hung up on fonts if you haven't like picked fonts for your church or anything yet, because web fonts, when it comes down to it, like there's only so many web fonts you can pick from.
Yeah.
And also you're going to be using a lot of fonts in things that are not necessarily your web, but other areas too. So it's kind of, I see people spend too much time on fonts, and I just caution you. And the same thing goes to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is church logos.
Church logo itself, yep.
So church logos, Matt, you can spend a lot of time with church logos, and you can also spend no time on church logos. Let's talk about them real quick.
To start this off, this is what I'm going to say. I don't want you to overthink your logo. And I don't want you to spend an enormous amount of time thinking about your logo. One thing that I've run into in talking with churches, especially in talking about their logo and their design, is I think churches kind of get hung up on this idea that they want the logo to represent everything that the church is and does and will be. When really the logo is just an identifier that when someone sees it, they know, oh, that's that church.
Yeah.
You can even there's the icon portion of the logo and then the text, like the name of the church.
Yeah.
It just needs to be such that icon, you could leave out the words and people will see that and know, oh, that's Potential Church. That's New Covenant. That's, Springs Church. That's whatever. They can just see that and know, oh, that's that church.
Yeah. And logos, because a lot of churches, and I asked the question in the chat, but does your church have a logo? And a lot of churches already have a logo, especially if you've been at church for at least a few years. And this is more so just, if you already got a logo and everything, great. But there's this whole thing of rebranding, and a lot of times when churches are doing new websites, they're thinking, well, maybe it's time to change our logo and stuff. And so, this is a perfect time to rethink your logo if that's something you want to do. Also, on the flip side, if you're in a particular denomination, then you're probably not caring as much about that because you're using your denomination logo. So there's that flip of the coin as well.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin as well. So if you already have a logo, or if you're using your church's denominational logo, that's fine. In that case, the only thing you need to be aware of when it comes to the website is that you need a copy of that logo that is a PNG file, not as opposed to like JPEG or other file formats. It needs to be in PNG format with a transparent background.
And let's show this one. So this is my church example, and if you know where this example is coming from, the joke it's coming from, this is Random Action Verb Church that I created. And this logo here, it's just a cool little like sunrise coming over, and RAVC. Yeah, just very basic. Whenever you're creating logos for websites, because your logo is kind of that thing that's letting people know, like, hey, you're here. You want it to be a logo that's wider than it is taller.
Yes. By what Wes is saying is you want it to it needs to be horizontally oriented, because I see a lot of churches with a logo where the icon portion of the logo is on top and then the text is below.
Yeah.
So it's vertically oriented. But that's going to look really tiny in that top left-hand corner. You want it to be horizontal so it fills up that space and it can actually be read. not just on a desktop, but on a mobile device.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yeah.
It needs to be big enough that on a small screen, people can still read it. And another thing to be aware of is I see a lot of church logos that have the church's name and like the tagline, the mission statement, the motto, whatever. And that's in small font.
Very small.
Very small.
And so if we go back to this, you can see you can put small font on here if you wanted to, but man, that's going to be really hard for people to see. And so a lot of times when we're creating church logos for a site or using our existing logo, simpler is typically always better, because once we start getting into the nooks and crannies of trying to do anything that has a lot of detail to it, that detail just gets lost and no one sees it.
Yeah. So if you're in the quote unquote market for a new church logo and you don't know where to begin, I highly recommend using Canva. If you've watched any of our videos that we've done, we talk about Canva all the time, to the point where I think people wonder if maybe we're like they're a sponsor.
I wish they sponsored me.
As far as we know, Canva doesn't know we exist. We love Canva. We highly recommend churches use Canva for one particular reason, and that is that their paid subscription, they offer to not just churches but nonprofits for free.
Yeah.
So you get the full suite of their tools and resources at no cost. But they have lots of templates that you can use that will help you design a church logo. You can put one together really quickly. If you know your color palette and you know your font, you already have half the battle done. Just pick a really cool icon and run.
Yeah, and then the last thing to kind of wind this all down with church branding. So once you have your logo, which many of you already have, you have your colors, you have your fonts and stuff, you want to have what we call a brand kit, or just a place where you have, where all that stuff lives.
Yeah.
And so for example, you can see right here, I've got all the different logos for this Revival Church, and I've got the color palette and everything. And then the only thing I'm missing here would be just our different fonts and when we use them and stuff. But it's really, really important to have a brand kit, because it just not only keeps us consistent with our website as we build it, but it keeps us consistent with our branding across the board at our church. And when it's consistent, it just pops and it looks so good.
Yeah. Not that the key is professionalism at churches, because we're here for our focus is the gospel. But a comprehensive and consistent branding just really conveys that you've got it together and that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's really crucial to have a brand kit. Another reason we recommend Canva is because you can load your logos and your fonts and your color palette into Canva, and it's just there in the toolbar as you design things. So you can quickly add those elements in to make everything consistent.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the anatomy of a church website, and not just a church website, but a good one.
Because so far everything we've talked about is really just the groundwork.
Yes, because it's so important.
So important.
We can't just run into this thing and just freeform it. I mean, we have to have some intentionality behind a website, because it is the front door of our church.
Yeah, you have to know the purpose. You have to know the goals. You have to have your colors. You have to have your logo. You have to have those things ready to go. It's almost like when you're doing your accounting. You need to have your receipts. You need to have your bank statement before you can actually balance the books.
Yeah.
So now it's time to actually talk about the website itself and talk through the anatomy and the different aspects of that website. We're going to be using Church Connect as a demonstration, but just like we mentioned at the very top of this, the principles we're sharing transcend platform. So if you're using Squarespace or Wix, you can still use and apply these principles to what you have at your church.
All right, so to show off my demo page of Potential Church, and this is a very basic website I whipped up a while back just to kind of show things off. The first thing you have in your website is actually right here at the very top, and that is your URL for your church's website. And so one thing that we offer in ChurchTrac when you're building websites with Church Connect is you have the ability to actually use your URL. So let me know in the chat, do you already own your domain for your website? So do you already own your domain? Maybe your church name is like Awesome Church and you have awesomechurch.org or something like that. But let me know in the chat if you already own your domain. because that's step one, is people can't get to your website unless they know your domain, your URL, and that's something that you typically purchase through someone that is a domain registrar. I know GoDaddy is a popular one, even though I always say, please, please, please don't use GoDaddy because there's so many other better ones out there. But yeah, and most of you already own your domain and everything. And so if you are planning on using Church Connect to build out your website, you can connect your domain and everything to ChurchTrac. And the process of doing that, it's pretty straightforward. You just go to the Actions button in Church Connect, and then you select that domain setup. And then right from there, mine's already set up, so it's showing me setup complete. But whenever you go to start domain setup, it then walks you through the process, asks you some questions, so that way you can start pointing your DNS servers and moving all that over. Now, we host your website, but your domain registrar, the place that you bought your domain name from, that's who you're paying every year to own that address, that URL of your website. So I hope I make that clear, because I know some people, this is very foreign to you, and you're like, wait a minute, so I have to purchase my domain from somewhere, but then you host my website for free. Yeah, think of your domain is your address that you have to pay for every year for it, and you're hosting it where your website actually is. That's us hosting it here at ChurchTrac through the Church Connect platform. So that is that. I just wanted to quickly show that. But you can see I've already got potential.church. The potential.church is my church's website. So that's step one, is having your domain URL. But then going through that, let's talk about, we're going to work our way down here on this website. So the first thing I see here is our nav bar. And the nav bar is one of those things that it's actually really important because it comes back to our goals of what we're trying to accomplish. And so the first thing in our nav bar, our logo, and I just threw a basic text logo here. Obviously, if your church has like images, things like that you've created, you want to put that in kind of in a similar fashion to the Random Action Verb Church. I've got that sunrise and everything with our church logo here. You'll want to put that in, and in Church Connect, it's pretty easy to put that in. You just go to your page setup, and then you select the edit nav bar, and then I can go ahead and I can put that logo in.
Select that logo option and just drag and drop it in.
Yeah, drag and drop it. And then here you can also customize your colors, but you'll want to use those hex codes, so you can put in those codes there, to that way you can have your colors be exactly to your brand. And then also you can adjust the height of your nav bar and all that good stuff. Now the other thing I'll talk about is links. So these coincide exactly with what we were talking about in our goals. Like, what are the most important things that we want people to do? And so for ours, we have planning a visit, connecting with us, give, and about us.
And just off the top, seeing those 4 links right at the very top of the website, I can already tell that this church is prioritizing the new guest experience.
Yes.
Prioritizing outreach to visitors. Because planning a visit, your members don't need to do that.
No.
They already know.
They already
know everything on that, all the details that are in that page. Giving is probably the one thing that's more directed to members than anything else, but you want that there to make it easy for the members to set up like recurring giving and stuff like that online. But the connect and about, that's getting more information, to your potential guests. So yeah, that's what Wes is talking about.
Yeah.
You need to know what the purpose is and then what the goals are, and then you can add links or buttons or more information about those things to the website.
Yeah. Now, moving past the nav bar, let's talk about this big section here. We call this the hero.
The hero.
The hero. Now, the hero, you have a few things that live here in your hero. The first thing, probably some of you see, is like an image here. I always say, for a long time, a lot of churches were putting just like a picture of their church. And I understand.
You mean like the building?
Yeah, like the building.
Yeah.
And the mindset behind that was, I guess it just made it easier to someone go on your website and be like, oh, that's what the building looks like. So then when I go visit the church, there's the building that I saw on the website. But that's probably one of the worst things to put on our websites, if I'm being honest. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because it's not really emphasizing like who we are as a church.
No.
It's not showing our people. So highly recommend putting a picture that has something like maybe worship that's happening at your church. Or maybe if your church is really well known for a food bank or ministry or something, maybe you feature that. I really liked, when I created this image for RAVC Church, because this is a casual beach type of church, I thought this was so great because it's kind of showing, here's a mom that's teaching her kid how to surf.
Yeah.
And in a community like this really resonates with the people. So you want to have some sort of image that really resonates with your target audience, AKA your community. Mm-hmm. Now moving beyond that, we have our headline headline here. Now the headline, this is something that you really want to keep under about 10 words, and it just sums up your church. And so like finding our potential in Christ to grow his kingdom. Boom.
Well, I mean, a lot of churches already have this.
Yeah.
It's their mission statement.
Yeah.
And now your mission statement may be more than 10 words, and so it may be worth exploring how to make that mission statement just a touch more concise. There's not like a hard stop at 10, but it's just you want it to be as concise as possible to get across that message as quickly as possible, because most people are determining and judging your website within the first seconds.
Yes.
So it needs to hit them right away what your mission is and what kind of church you are.
Yeah, and this really, so then we have, moving past that, we have got the subheadline. And the subheadline, this is describing our church in more detail. And so I put an example of a modern church. Take out the an example of, because you're not going to put that on yours. The reason I put this here is because sometimes people actually go to this website thinking it's a real church.
Okay.
So I like actually had to put that there. But a modern family church. So right there, I know, all right, this is a more modern church. This is a family-oriented church.
Yes.
Located in downtown Jacksonville. I'm going to unpack all this more in a second. Come worship with us. So in our subheadlines, we want to say like, what is like the vibe of our church? What kind of church are we? Where are we located? Because believe it or not, this is really good for your SEO when people are searching for churches near me. This is screaming to Google, my church is located in downtown Jacksonville. So when people search church in downtown Jacksonville, church in Jacksonville, that's going to help it. And then come worship with us. This is the call to action, which most churches, we want people to, hey, come visit us and worship with us. And so there you go, come worship with us. And then our number one call to action, plan a visit. I see some churches do 2 call to actions. There is no right and wrong way here as long as you have at least one. But ours is plan a visit. And so then when people select that, then it takes them to a plan a visit page where they can learn more about like what to expect and our service times and all that good stuff. So that's the hero. Okay. The hero. Now moving down, I have actually, maybe someone has named this and maybe I'm stealing and not even knowing I am. I call this next section the sidekick. Because
there's the hero.
Yes, every good hero needs a good sidekick.
Every Batman needs a Robin.
So in this particular situation, going back to our example of potential church, my call to action is to plan a visit, but then my second call to action in my sidekick here is to find a group. And this is calling people to join a small group. And this is actually going back intentionally to the funnel of what does our church want to do? Well, we want to get people to visit our church, and then we also want them to get plugged into a small group so they can deepen their relationship with Jesus with other people in a more small group setting. And so
But that means that the overall goal is connection.
Yes.
You want whoever's visiting the website to connect deeper with the church. And so they either plan a visit if they've never been, or they find a group. And I mean, if they're a visitor and they also look for a group, that's all the better.
Now I'm just going to throw this out because I want to really emphasize this is very situational for every church. Let's say you're a church and there's a beach town north of us and they have churches there that really don't have a massive amount of people going there except like the snowbirds, but their church is actually a really big venue for weddings all the time. And so they actually have a call to action for booking their church as a wedding venue and stuff because it's such an important thing because that church is more of like a chapel. So it always comes back to like what's going on at your church, who are the people you're serving and the community you serve, and that'll dictate the different call to actions. Okay, so that is the hero, that is the sidekick, and other things you could put on your sidekick. It could be sermon times, or not sermon times, but your service times.
Service times, yeah.
It could be watching a live stream. It really just comes down to what do you think is like the second most important thing you want people to do. Now, past that, let's talk about content, because now we're getting into like content
the
of a
actual
website.
Meat of the sandwich.
We're seeing, and just to show off, like I've got all these, we call these connect cards, but all these different cards that take us to different areas, like planning a visit. I re-emphasize that, watching now on a live stream, giving online, getting connected. We have events here. So there are 2 different types of content on a church website. The first content is the static content, and static content doesn't change. You don't want to change your headline every week. You don't want to change your call to actions. You want all this stuff up here to stay the same for the most part, and maybe occasionally change it. And that goes for the bottom of your website too, in the footer, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. But this is your static stuff. Think of your static stuff as like a sandwich. A sandwich is a sandwich is a sandwich. You always have bread in a sandwich, unless you're, I guess, maybe one of those low carb people that's eating lettuce
the tortillas
and
or
yeah,
lettuce,
whatever maybe. So think of your static stuff as the bread that's holding everything together, and it's not changing. But then we have the dynamic content, and that is the second type of content. This is the content that you're going to be changing. A good church website has a good mix of both of these things. A bad church website has too much of either of these things. So if your church website has all this content that never changes, what's
the use in going and visiting that site?
Nobody's going to go visit it. None of your members are going to go visit it, and then you'll just get some people that are, maybe thinking about visiting. And then if you have a website that's always changing constantly, it's going to confuse your members. It's going to confuse people that are maybe trying to learn. So you want to have a good mix of both, but that's why we're seeing this trend. A lot of churches, their dynamic content is in the center, and it's sandwiched between this stuff, where then they can see, all right, I have these upcoming 2 events that are coming up. I have prayer requests I can give online, but then you can have other sermon series. I see churches, they'll put their sermon series down here, or maybe they'll put a sermon series up there. And so every week that's changing for whatever sermon series they're in. And so you want to have a good mix of that dynamic content.
Well, to go back to SEO, having dynamic and static content help your SEO. Having the static content have the keywords that people are looking for is crucial, but also having dynamic content lets Google know that this is not just a dead, defunct website.
Yes.
It's active, it's current, and so it's worth putting near the top of search results.
Yes, and creating content with Church Connect is so incredibly easy. Like if I just go on here, and by the way, I can edit any of my content pretty quickly. I can change what I want my call to action button to go to and stuff like that when you're on the page setup section here. But I mean, I can go on here and let's say I want to add another section. I love just having this content where I can pull from all these templates. Highly encourage everybody in here, if you're using Church Connect to build your church website, our team has already done all this legwork for you to be able to add in your content for your site. And so if you're wanting to do a quick service times, boom, I could select that. If I want to meet the staff, there we go, I've got meet the staff. If I want to throw in a huge map because I want to make it easy for people to find out how to get to our church, we have all this pre-made stuff. I mean, here's a great section here with a call to action. So if I wanted to add that in there, I could real quick. Do I want to add it? Yes. And then from here, I can start customizing it out, whatever I want it to say and stuff. And so really think through kind of the content you want to make and just go ahead, use that page setup, start adding it. But then the other aspect is utilizing the cards in Church Connect, because these cards make it so easy to add all of this dynamic content. And so you can quickly add cards that do so many different things, whether you're wanting to add a completely different page for people to go to, whether it's like a learn more about our church or meet our staff or something. If you want to link to something else, if you want to create a form, maybe a volunteer sign-up form or prayer request form, a registration card to register for an event. We have so many different types of cards here you can choose from. So I highly encourage you, dig into that. You're going to be using cards a lot in Church Connect. And basically any website I'm seeing now that's like pretty current and trendy, I guess, but not trendy in a bad way, that's really trying to communicate with people at another level. They're leveraging this type of web design where they have this static content, but then they have these cards, so to speak, that take people into all these different areas. And it's just so cool. Like when you go to here's my other example page. I mean, you can make this stuff look so pretty and really just go wild. If you're the type of person that likes to go wild with designing things and stuff and leveraging tools like Canva, you can create some pretty beautiful stuff.
Some really incredible stuff. I've seen some Church Connect sites that just I could never have designed. Yeah. Blows my mind what people are able to do.
It is really cool. And then the last thing, so we talked about all this dynamic content and static content. I want to make mention of the footer here. There is no right way to do a footer. There's no wrong way, but there's stuff that you probably should do. The biggest one being your address, because this helps drastically not only with your SEO, but also people just being able to know where you're located. Your phone number of your church, how people can get in touch with your church perhaps. Any links, you want to put important links down there. One thing, this is a practice that I find is probably one of the best when it comes to search engine optimization. And again, if you hear me say SEO, I'm talking about search engine optimization, and that means optimizing your website to make it easier for people to find you on Google. Embedding a Google map on your footer is one of the most powerful ways to make your local SEO really stand out. I think every church website should be embedding their location on a Google map in their footer. And then obviously like social media. This is stuff like, the reason we encourage churches to do this is because so many churches are doing this, and this is like kind of the standard of web design, that it will confuse your people if you put your social media in all these random places, or if you put your address in all these places and stuff. You want to just put all that in your footer. That way people can easily get to it.
Well, not just that people can easily get to it, but the footer is consistent across every page on your site. So
Yes.
it puts it everywhere. No matter where people are on the site, they can find that information.
Yeah.
And also having that Google map there in the footer, by putting it in the footer, you put your Google map on every page of your site.
Yep.
And Google likes seeing websites that use their products.
Yes.
So it improves your SEO to have that immediate link to Google Maps on your website.
Yeah, and so for many of you that are using Church Connect to build out your site, you're going to be using a hodgepodge of using this page setup tab as you add in all of these different elements here, leveraging those really awesome templates that we have where you can add pictures and all that stuff. I mean, I haven't even gotten deep into just some of the stuff that we offer here, where you can like select an image from Igniter Media, and you can search so many different types of images that we provide and just start going to town. It's kind of insane. This resource alone, churches spend, I think, like $50 a month for, and we include this in Church Connect for free. By the way, speaking of free, in case you didn't catch the drift earlier, Church Connect, it's hosted for free on ChurchTrac. So if you're on a standard or plus subscription, a current standard or plus subscription, you have a free website builder right
Fully
here,
included.
ready to rock. The only thing you have to pay for is just purchasing your domain name from somewhere, which then you can then connect and point to your Church Connect page. So beautiful. Now, we could get deeper into all this, but we just don't have time, because I really wanted this to be more so of just giving you an overview and just building a website and like how to start from the beginning with your branding and like your purposes and everything, and also just talking about the makeup of a website. And again, I want to show just real fast before we dive into some pro tips. Like, I have these two examples, and you can see these are very different examples, but also very similar examples with our random action verb church and how we've designed it. It's more square looking, and the colors are not as like vibrant. They're a little bit more toned down. But you can see like there's a lot of similarities between these two different sites that I've created. And so get some inspiration. Go take a look at a bunch of other church websites and how they're doing stuff, because that's one of the best ways to build a website, which I've kind of alluding to our pro tips that we're going to talk about. So let's talk about some pro tips. This is probably, I would say, get your pen and paper ready to write some of this down, because these pro tips, I've learned these from people that build websites for a living, do this all day, every day, and also from our team here at ChurchTrac that builds church websites. So pro tip number one, when it comes to building church websites, sometimes it's best to hire a professional.
Yeah, we wanted to start out with that, just so that we kind of let you know, we've made Church Connect the easiest church website builder out there, period. We believe in you. And also our support team is here to help you. If you ever have any questions, reach out to them with anything you need, and we'll point you in the right direction or give you the answers you're looking for. But if you don't have the bandwidth, we understand, we get it. Or if you just don't have the experience and the time to get familiar with how all of this works and how to put together a really good website, reach out to a professional. And you can also reach out to us, not just in a support ticket, but we offer a service where we will actually build a church website for you. So it's called Church Sites by ChurchTrac, right? Yep. I don't know why I'm asking you. I work here. I should know this. Church Sites by ChurchTrac. You can reach out to us. We'll build this for you. There's two different tiers to this. A quick site is just $99. You can have a full website for just $99. Or you can go even further and have us build a full website for you for just $299.
Yeah.
That is an absolute steal. I mean, there's nowhere that you can go that will give you a full church website for less than $1,000.
So I've spoken to a few of my friends that do websites for a living. This is all they do all day, every day.
Yeah.
The low end is $1,000 to build a church website. And the high end was like basically infinity. But he said, sometimes $5,000 for like a really substantial church website. And so compared to that, like you're talking a fraction of the cost. And our system, when it comes to building church websites, you message us, we gather all the info we need, we start building it out, we review that website together. And so that way you can tell us, hey, I like this, but I didn't like this. And then we make those updates and then you're finished. You have a party and you have a good website. So that's something, not that we're trying to upsell or anything. It's just something we offer just because we get it. We were in your shoes. We know that sometimes it's hard to do all the things and sometimes it's easier just to pay someone to do it. So that's a service we offer anyways.
Pro tip number 2, before you launch your site, get opinions from a few trusted people. I say few because we've done this before with churches where we'll do like a logo for them and then they'll workshop that with their church and let everybody offer their critiques and then get back to us and we're like, you don't need every single person's opinion on the website. Talk to just a few people that you know and trust that can have really good insight on web design and then go from there.
Yeah, and I think one of the best ways to approach it is not even, it's to look at your church and the people that are going to your church and find people that kind of represent that. And so if you have someone that's at your church that's a full-time mom, you have someone at your church that's a business owner that has a relatively successful business, you have someone at your church that maybe is not very technologically savvy, you have someone at your church that's like 15 and can do anything online, have a good mix of people looking at it and just say, hey, what do you think of this? And you even mentioned earlier, like talking maybe to someone who recently joined your church and getting their feedback like, hey, what did you think of our website prior, if you did have a website? And then what do you think of this, of what we're thinking of, launching?
Yeah, what about the website made you feel like you belonged here? And then try to carry that over into the new site, because you don't want to lose that. Obviously, it's working. Number 3, do get inspiration from other churches, but don't copy them. Yeah. So you can go to our Facebook group. I'll drop a link into the chat for that again. One thing that we see a lot in this Facebook group is churches asking, hey, do you all mind sharing a link to your Connect site so that we can get some ideas? And churches love sharing that because they've worked hard on it and they like it, so they want to show it off. Definitely go to our Facebook group. I just dropped the link into the chat for that again, and ask, like, what are you all doing with your website? Do you use Church Connect? What do your Church Connect sites look like? And take some inspiration, get ideas, but don't just copy, because they are not you and you are not them. Yeah. What they've done won't convey the uniqueness of your church in the way that it needs to be conveyed. So just get some inspiration, but do your own thing. Yeah.
All right, pro tip number 4, remember the majority of your website visitors
are mobile.
They're on one of these. So total web traffic, depending on what statistics you read, the last one I read, total web traffic in the United States, it had went over the majority a couple of years ago, and I think it was at 53%. But then I read some other stats in regards to church websites, and that number can be anywhere from 60% of visitors to our church websites all the way up to 75%.
Wow.
Depending on what statistic you pull up, and also kind of depending on the church. That means sometimes as we build church websites, and I do this all the time too when I'm building things, is you're looking at the desktop version of it, and you're forgetting, it's not the desktop version most people are going to see. It's the mobile version.
Yes.
And that's part of why, just to show this, I want to pull up my phone real quick for my Church Connect site, because I really want to stress this of why it's so important to make it mobile first. Now, I'm already seeing here, part of what makes mine look the way I don't want it to right now is because I have an example of, I want to take that off, and obviously this would be off if this is a real site, but this is a really good lens to look at your website through, because it makes you start to wonder, do I have too much text and everything, which we're going to talk about that in a second, and really think in terms of, is this easy to navigate in a phone? If someone was going to our website in their phone, could they easily navigate around, figure things out, know how to do all the things? Because most people are going to our website on a phone. Mm-hmm. So, and kind of to piggyback on that, because most people are going to our websites on phones, you probably want to think about like just the sheer amount of content we're putting on the site, because you don't want your website to load slow. So that's another thing.
Yeah. So number 5 is on your landing page, the devil is the details. Not the devil is in the details. The devil is the details. We say that because we've seen a lot of church websites, and we talk to a lot of church leaders that have websites where they put everything on the landing page.
Yeah.
They put like their announcements. They'll put all the upcoming events. Like they'll show a full calendar on the front page, and they'll put the mission statement and their like the list of all their beliefs and values and stuff like that. They'll lay everything out on the landing page. Don't do that. People don't. First of all, again, with people on mobile, visiting your site on mobile, they don't want to scroll forever or see a wall of text. That's very quickly overwhelming, and most people will either tune that out or even just bounce. They'll leave your website and not come back. Just give them the basics of what they need or what they're looking for, and only you know exactly what somebody would be looking for on your site in your context. But for the most part, just give them your mission statement. Give them some some links to where you want them to go and a call to action, and that's kind of it. That's about all you need to give them on the landing page. If you want them to learn more about the website, create another page for that and link to that page so that they can get that information if they're interested and want that. But don't lay it all out on the landing page and hope that they actually take 20 minutes to read it all.
Yeah, and this is something, it's funny because it's one of those things I didn't notice as much whenever I look at church leaders' websites when we're getting them switched over to ChurchTrac and everything.
Yeah.
But in talking with Michael, who is one of our people here, that's all he does all day is build church websites for churches. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the big things he told me about is I see so many churches with their current website where it's just a flood of information. And when we're on a mobile device, one of these things, people check out, they tune out when it's just a swath of text they have to scroll through.
Yeah.
Especially when we're wanting to give people like real things, like, going back to our main page. Like, I want people to know about the events I have coming up. I don't want those buried by a bunch of text. And so by us really being intentional about how much we're putting on our main landing page and how much we're leveraging all the other pages on our website to actually share that information that needs to be shared, it's just so important.
Yeah. So I guess like the real true pro tip number 5 is less is more.
It really is.
For the landing page, less is more.
It is, yeah, because we can leverage all these other pages on our website and everything. All right, so this was very hard to do, and I think we did it pretty much close to the time frame we were trying to accomplish, where we kind of covered the basics of building a church website. And yes, I know we didn't get like deep into showing like how to do a lot of these things in Church Connect, and part of the reason for that is because there's so much more to building a website than just like using Church Connect to build it. We have to have the foundation laid first, and we have to have our branding laid, because if we don't, then our website's really not going to look that good.
Yeah.
And it's got to look good because 80% of our people that before they visit our church go to our website. So that's kind of the reason why we put a lot more emphasis on other things to build those foundations of a church website, because I think they're equally as important as the creation of the site itself, all the thought behind, all right, what am I going to put on the site and why am I going to put it there? Yeah. And how do I want my brand to look on the site? And how do we even do branding? So,
all right, well, we really enjoyed chatting with all of you and answering all of your questions and talking to you about how to design and build a church website. I'm dropping the links to the YouTube channel and the Facebook group just one more time, just to make sure you all have that, because we would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch all the videos. We'll have this video on the YouTube channel in the coming days as well, so you can go back and watch all of this again. We also have that Facebook group that we would love for you to join with all of the other ChurchTrac users to get your questions answered there as well. Hope you learned something. Hope you got something out of this and you're ready to hit the ground running with your church website and build something awesome. Hope you have a blessed day.
See ya.